Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. Today we're back with the Empire. This is not actually my game, this is another game from Rydist. He's going to be taking on Rigson, who's playing the Skaven, so we're definitely in for another great battle, both very high level players, so let's get straight to it. Volkmar the Grim, of course, going to be leading the way for the Empire. Let's take a look at his loadout. He's got the Jade Griffin, Grand Hammer of Sigmar, and Banishment. Looks like that's pretty much it. Front line of great swords with the Sigmar Sons in the center, some spearmen with shields scattered around as well. Grey Wizard, interesting to not see Lore of Life, but I guess with Volkmar you don't necessarily need it as much. Grey Wizard's pretty good in this matchup. Penumbral Pendulum, Enfeebling Foe, and Melkos Mystifying Miasma, always good choices. I would argue that Grey Wizard's good in almost any matchup. But Royal Althorp Gryphites, he's got a couple units of Empire Knights as well. 2 Great Cannons, protected by some more Spearmen with Shields. That's pretty much it for the Empire. Going over to the Skaven here, we've got a couple of Warp Lightning Cannons with 1 Plague Claw Catapult. 3 units of Rat Ogres, Lord Skrolk, no surprise, Skaven Slave Spears as well. We've got 2 Storm Vermin, Sword and Board with some more slaves up front, and 3 units of Plague Monks. So let's get straight to it. Yeah, super fun matchup. I know I've showed a couple battles of this matchup recently, but I wanted to show this one off as well because, number one, it's an epic battle, and it goes down to the absolute wire. And yeah, it's also just so much fun. There's so many variety of different builds that you can bring in this matchup. Right now we're going to get a bit of an artillery duel going. You can see both the Great Cannons popping off shots into the Warp Lightning Cannons, trying to take down the artillery pieces, although the Empire definitely taking the south end of this engagement so far. You can see one of the Great Cannons has already been taken down. I found that artillery duels like this actually come down to mostly RNG as to whether the shots actually connect on the artillery pieces themselves. That being said, it is typically easier to win that engagement if you're against the Skaven rather than playing as them, because the Skaven artillery pieces are pretty large. That being said, Warp Lightning Cannons are very accurate. You can see they've already shut down 2 of the Great Cannons out of this particular battery here. So Rydist is going to be going ahead and advancing. The final cannon from that battery being shut down. So yeah, 1 Great Cannon already offline. That being said, it looks like one of these Warp Lightning Cannons finally been taken down, and the Plague Claw Catapult also doing what it can to rout off the crew there. But yeah, Empire Knights pushing up and around the flanks there. You can see the Skaven infantry force going to be kind of repositioning to try and face a little more square here. Surprised we didn't see any Storm Vermin with halberds. I think they'd be pretty good against the Empire Cavalry. But I guess he wanted the Sword and Shield variant instead, just in case there were a lot of Empire infantry. The Great Swords here will do pretty well against most of these Skaven infantry here, although of course if they get mashed on by Rat Ogres, that's going to be very uncomfortable, certainly. But yeah, at this point, this Great Cannon so far has had 0 out of 3 destroyed, so you can kind of see the RNG at play there with those artillery duels. It can be risky to try and take an artillery duel straight up, because if you end up losing out on that value without doing much damage to anything important, it can be pretty painful. But yeah, one more gun out of that battery going down. But at this point, this Warp Lightning Cannon is down to only 1 gun as well. So now the Great Cannon going to be retargeting over onto this next unit here. Meanwhile, the Plague Claw Catapult doing some really nice damage to the Great Swords before they can get to the front line there. Already taken down almost 30 unit models, so that's good stuff. So far, the skirmish phase has definitely been won by the Skaven, but we'll see if they can hold up in this infantry fight here. Skaven Slaves running in against State Troop Spearmen. The Spearmen will easily be able to take this fight, no problem. May take them a little bit of time. They'll definitely win without too much issue there. Plague Claw Catapult missing a few shots there, and Volkmar are going to be coming straight up the pipe, probably terrifying away a lot of these Skaven units very, very quickly. You can see the Spearmen definitely pulled back there, and the Sigmar Sons with the Grand Hammer of Sigmar up to 64 melee attack, just cutting apart these Plague Monks. Not to mention, it looks like we're going to have a Penumbral Pendulum going down as well, so looks like Rydist have aggressively trying to push through the front line there. That being said, the Rat Ogres coming in, doing some good damage, but immediately the Royal Althorp Gryphites, I thought were going to respond there, but it does look like they're pulling back instead. A nice rear charge about to land home on the Storm Vermin from the Empire Knights. That is certainly one way to do some good damage to the Storm Vermin, is through shock damage, of course. It did take some good shock damage there, although he's going to have to be careful. There's some Rat Ogres following up here. Looks like he's just going to countercharge straight into the Rat Ogres. Will do some damage on the charge, but that's probably going to lose that Empire Knight there, though the other Empire Knight has pushed all the way up and around and is collapsing those Skaven Slave Slingers. Oh man, the Slingers just took a ton of damage there. And there's a bit of a terror route going down through the center as well. Great Swords pushing up through. We've got Empire Knights slugging it out in this center pocket here. The Great Sword's probably going to be going after those Storm Vermin there. But, yeah, the Rat Ogres, although they did do some good damage, they don't have the best leadership, so that rear charge from that other unit of Empire Knights was able to break them off, although they did kind of trade with another unit of Empire Knights there. Royal Altar Gryphites in the center are going to be tough for the Skaven to deal with. The Terror, in particular, with Volkmar and the Royal Altar Gryphites both in the same area, it's going to be tough. Man, did Volkmar just destroy that artillery piece? Did you guys see that? That was awesome. I'm not sure if that was Volkmar, if it was like a cannon shot or something, or maybe it was this Grey Wizard here, but anyway, Royal Altar Gryphites pushing off the Skaven in the back line. You can see the balance of power is currently in the Skaven's favor, slightly, although I'm not sure how exactly they're going to deal with Volkmar at this point. I guess they do have one more unit of Rat Ogres relatively healthy over here, just seeing off those Empire Knights now. It does look like they're going to hook them around and try and go after these Great Swords here, who are currently just completely bogged down in a unit of Skaven Slave Spears, which is definitely unfortunate for them. But at least I think those are, yeah, Skaven Slave Spears. So anyway, Skrulk getting a couple of good attacks here on Volkmar, but of course he has that regeneration. Looks like Libri Bubonicus also going down. It is worth noting up on his War Altar here that Volkmar does have 40% magic resistance, so that Libri Bubonicus actually going to be a little bit wasted there. Probably should have gone instead on the Grey Wizard, assuming he's still alive. I actually don't know if he is still alive. Maybe not, but anyway. At this point, the balance power creeping more in the Skaven's favor, despite the fact that they're getting a huge terror route going down in the back line. They do have a very healthy unit of Storm Vermin here, and Volkmar's taking some hits, which is what's affecting the balance power so severely here. But as he pulls away and starts to heal up a bit, it'll be alright. That unit of Reserve Spearmen getting hit by the Plague Claw catapults. Volkmar comes in, his horse just eats the head of a couple of these Skavens here. But, yeah, again, he's going to take some side attacks from Skrulk, and that's going to be relatively uncomfortable. There's also these Rat Ogres coming in here, so all of a sudden Volkmar's in a very dangerous situation, and despite the Royal Altar Gryphites still being very healthy, they're way out of position here, cleaning up some Rat Ogres. So, yeah, it's going to be rough stuff for Volkmar. He's going to have to try and keep Volkmar alive here. Does have some rallying state troops around to try and do so. But we'll see. Very, very tight battle right now. Empire Knights cleaning up some of these Skaven Slave Slingers in the back. They've been doing a great job. Very cost effective. The fact that they're still online is very, very important. But yeah, you can see Volkmar struggling to get away. He's constantly taking hits here, as he does from these Rat Ogres. And the fire from the Slingers won't do a lot, but it will do a little bit. But you can see he's pushing back with the Royal Altar Gryphites. Volkmar should be able to survive until he gets into contact with them, assuming nothing goes horribly wrong. But yeah, with the Royal Altar Gryphites coming back, he should be able to re-secure Volkmar, and that's got to be priority mission number one. Because between the Gryphites and Volkmar, he'll be able to clean up what's left of the Skaven forces if he can keep them healthy enough to keep their leadership together. But yeah, the Gryphites come in and just take down these Rat Ogres super hard. Then Volkmar comes back for another charge here. Looks like he did drop some of the buffs there. Grandhammer Sigmar putting up to 59 melee attack for those Royal Altar Gryphites. Granted, they are still taking some damage here, but it looks like Volkmar finally going to be dropping that Bound Banishment in the late game here to do a bunch of damage to the Storm Vermin. That actually did some really solid damage there. So Volkmar up to 90 kills. And the Altar Gryphite's going to be trying to push away a lot of the units in this pocket. So we'll fast forward a little bit through this late game cleanup phase here, as there is quite a bit of cleanup left to do for the Empire. The balance power still slightly in the Skaven's favor, and one of the big mistakes here, I think, by the Skaven in the late game is not targeting this Plague Claw catapult onto the Altdorf Gryphites, which, I mean, obviously right now they're kind of inundated by some spears, but the Storm Vermin will be able to push them off, and the Plague Claw catapult, although it's not meant as an anti-cav or anti-large type artillery piece, it still does armor-piercing damage and has that Discourage. So if it could land one or two solid shots here, because the Demigryph Knights have such a low model count, they could potentially take some pretty severe damage, and if the Discourage is enough in the critical moment to rout off their leadership, or to get them low enough to rout off, you know, that could be potentially very critical. But you can see the Plague Claw catapult here is faced in the wrong direction and unfortunately not shooting at those Royal Altar Gryphites, who themselves are getting very low just through sheer attrition. Volkmar is getting pretty close to his healing cap, but we'll fast forward a little bit more as you can see Ridus realizes the danger of these Plague Claw catapults. 1 or 2 shots could finish off his Demigryph Knights. Missed shots cleanly there, but they are going to collapse down the hill there. Looks like, ooh, actually going back briefly to finish off those 2 Rat Ogres, who both immediately go down. But yeah, then the Plague Claw catapult crew going to come forward. And that'll be it pretty much for the Skaven with the Plague Claw Catapult offline. There's really not a lot they have left that can deal with the Royal Altar Gryphites or Volkmar. So you can see as Skroll starts to take some damage from Volkmar, he drops that last banishment there. And yeah, it's going to be GG for the Skaven. You can see the balance of power finally starting to shift more and more in the Empire's favor. And as Skroll and more of the units here take damage, it'll start to shift more and more. Although still surprisingly even at this point, just barely with a minute left to go, less than a minute, finally shifts decisively in the Empire's favor. So a very nice comeback by Ridus, very well played by Rigson as well. Just one, I think, key little mistake there, not quite focusing that Plague Claw Catapult on the Altdorf Gryphites in time, but just goes to show how the terror from the Empire can be super strong against the Skaven, and you don't even have to bring a Griffin. I mean, the Altdorf Gryphites and Volkmar are your 2 options for a ground-based attack that can also cause terror, and I do think that they're both very effective picks against the Skavens. So Ridus, in terms of the rest of his army here, I mean, Empire Knights can be super cost-effective against the Skaven. Great Swords, one of them got kind of dumped on a little bit, but the other Great Sword and Sigmar's Sons also did very well. 90 kills on Spearmen with Shields too. Not too bad. I didn't catch the Grey Wizard getting assassinated. I must have missed that there. But anyway, Liber Bubonicus, other than that, he might have honestly wanted to use it on the Royal Altar Gryphites. I haven't actually tried that myself, but because they have a relatively low model count, I think it could do a solid amount of damage to them. You guys let me know in the comments down below if you have tried that, how it works. But I would think, because they have a relatively low model count, it could potentially do some good damage there. And I'm wondering if he had put it on these guys instead of Volkmar in that late game situation, if it would have turned out differently. I mean, obviously, you want to do damage to Volkmar as much as possible, especially when you don't have a ton of tools to take him down. But that magic resistance, man, it's pretty serious. 40% mitigation means you're losing out on a lot of the value there. So, you know, it'd be interesting. I might have to do some testing with that myself. For Rigson, the Warp Lightning Cannons did some pretty good work, although probably not as much as he would have liked. The Plague Claw Catapult, though, on the other hand, did some really nice work against those Great Swords. Rat Ogres, always a solid choice against the Empire. Plague Monks, one of them did okay, but the issue with Plague Monks is they're a little bit expensive and they can take some pretty severe shock damage, especially from Empire heavy cavalry units, although they will win that infantry fight against pretty much anything except Great Swords. They'll win pretty decisively, but the Sword and Board Stormvermin also doing very well. I honestly think he would have benefited to perhaps have these guys as halberds instead, just to take down knights. But again, he played it very well and almost brought it back there just to sheer, you know, throwing bodies at Ridus there. So very much in style with the Skaven. So I don't know how much I really have leeway to criticize this list, but still just trying to give you guys my thoughts. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.